David Oyelowo, you star in the HBO film Nightingale as Peter Snowden, who's a disturbed military vet who in the film is trying to cover up a crime. How did you react to this story and this character when you first read the script?
Well, when I first read this script, the thing that struck me the most is the audacity of the script. Really, it's an incredibly brave, singular, unique film. To be perfectly honest, when I read it, I kind of found myself feeling, okay, I love this, but is it achievable? Can you have one guy in a house who starts out from the offset having committed this heinous crime be someone who we as an audience are going to stick with for an hour and a half? I mean, there were just so many things about it that felt unique, but also challenging in terms of making a movie. And for me personally, as an actor, that's what you're looking for. That's what you want. You want to not only challenge yourself, but also the audience. And Nightingale as a script certainly was presenting that opportunity.
I talked to the director of the film, Elliot Lester, earlier today, and he talked about how the both of you were almost approaching this project were sort of with like trepidation and a little anxiety because you weren't sure if you could pull this off necessarily. Was there ever a point during the production where you thought, okay, this is actually working?
No, it was such such an unusual film to make. I'm the only actor in it. I had no actor to bounce off of, whether it be ideas or literally within a scene. We shot it in chronological order, which was also unusual. I stayed in character for the 3 weeks, which is I'd never done before, but I felt it was necessitous for the nature of the character I was playing, and it all takes place in one house. So all of the normal indicators you have of whether a film is feeling good or not were not there. We really went in without a safety net on this. But the one thing I did know as we were shooting it is that it felt like we were telling the truth. It felt like we were doing something unique and original and brave. And that in and of itself has its place. So for me, selfishly, at the very least, I thought, well, I feel like I'm going to be a better actor beyond this experience than I currently am. And everything else beyond that is going to be a bonus, really.
Staying in character for this film, it's such a dark character. Once it was over, did you miss this character, or was it kind of a relief to be able to sort of shake it off a bit?
Gosh, I didn't miss the character, but it was tough to shake off because you know Peter is someone who has a constant internal dialogue going on. And what you see in the film are moments where that internal dialogue is articulated, whether it be him recording himself for a YouTube video or a phone call, or talking to a mirror, or talking to the fish, or talking to himself, or talking to a fried egg. He is literally someone who, like I say, has this constant conversation going on in his head. And if you stay in character for 3 weeks, what you're doing is you have an inner monologue going. And so to switch that off actually was tougher than I anticipated. But I was very happy once those voices quietened down.
In most projects, of course, you're working with other actors. Did it feel was it kind of lonely and isolating to be alone in front of the camera, even though there are other people obviously on set with you?
It was lonely because you're as an actor, you're used to and you rely on another actor's energy taking you in directions that you hadn't anticipated. And that's what makes acting feel like life, because in life, you know, you and I are having a conversation right now. I don't know what your next question is going to be, but the way I react to that is what we know as life. And even though with a script, you may know the nature of the question someone is going to ask you or the conversation you're going to have, how they're going to ask it, you know, the nuance that's going to have is something you can't anticipate. And that's what makes it feel alive. So not having that, but having someone who talks constantly for an hour and a half is again was a challenge, because you are relying entirely on your own resources as an actor, hopefully portraying the truth. And but it does mean that your barometer of what's working and what isn't is kind of non-existent. You just got to trust that what you're doing is going to be compelling enough to hold the audience's interest.
When I saw the film, at first I thought, not having realized, where the story had come from, that it might have been adapted from a play, because it feels like something that, you could definitely do this kind of story on a stage. You have a lot of past theater experience. Did this feel at all like shooting, like doing a play, or was it completely different?
In some aspects, it was like doing a play. For instance, I made the choice. Again, I think the necessitous choice to learn the whole script before we started shooting, because I didn't want to be preoccupied with learning lines while I'm trying to stay in character. I didn't want anything of my performance to feel technical. I wanted it to feel lived in. And that's what you do when you're going to do a play, because, for 2 to 3 hours, you're on a stage, with no safety net, hopefully telling the truth to the audience. And so from that point of view, it did have elements that felt like a play, but then it really was a movie. There's a camera there, and you have to endure the kind of scrutiny that you don't on stage, which is not only is the camera there, but it's right. I mean, I literally, as Peter Snowden, do what we are doing right now. The camera is right there, and I'm recording a video for, hopefully, people out there who are listening to what I have to say. And that kind of scrutiny is not what you have to endure on stage, and it's very exposing. And so from that point of view, it was a uniquely cinematic experience.
There are actually a number of other characters in this story, but they're, mostly talking to Peter on the phone, and we only hear your side of the conversation. Since you're the one who has to convey, not only Peter but his relationships to these other characters, did it ever feel like almost like you were playing multiple roles in a way?
I was playing multiple roles. Peter has dissociative identity disorder, which is what we used to call multiple personality disorder. And he, it's not something we sort of articulate in the film, but you can feel that there are different versions of this man that emerge at any given time. And that particular condition is one that is born out of trauma. You have these alters, you have these variations on a person that manifest in order to deal with varying situations that pose a threat. And so I absolutely was playing multiple characters within myself, but also he's reacting to multiple characters. His sister, the man he's infatuated with, the man's wife, the pastor, his mother's friends, some of who are on the other end of the line. Sometimes they are manufactured. They are conversations that he is having in order to deal with choices he's made or choices that he's trying to make. And so, that's the thing about doing this as well, is that he is a puppeteer of his world. He is talking, but he's also orchestrating the world around him, even though he's in complete isolation.
The most important relationship in the film, I would say, is probably between Peter and his mother, who obviously isn't able to speak for herself. It almost feels like a kind of Norman Bates quality to the way he projects this domineering personality onto her. Did you, when playing it, did you feel there was any truth to the way he views her, or is that maybe part of his delusion?
I think there's absolute truth to it, but it's his truth. And the one thing I think you have as a takeaway when you watch this film is that um, Peter is a fairly unreliable source of information because he talks in half truths because that's what enables him to get through his day. But I think that it's very clear that he is someone who is dealing with the byproducts of having a very heavy-handed, matriarchal, domineering mother. That alongside of being sexually confused, being someone who is suffering PTSD from having been in the military, someone who is manifesting the byproducts of religious repression. You know, these are all truths, but they don't exonerate him from what he has done, and he has created a world in which he is to blame for nothing and everyone is to blame for everything.
Now, the character says and does some monstrous things and goes to some really dark places. I was wondering, having to play him and empathize with him as an actor. Did you see him as more of a tragic figure or more of a villainous figure?
I think it's fair to say that Peter is a tragic figure. I wouldn't categorize him as villainous because his unstable mental state means that he is not what we would call a psychopath. He's not someone who commits the acts he commits with no remorse. What he has done is he has created sides of himself that mean that he isn't even engaging in what he has actually done. And that's tragic. To literally not be able to engage in the reality of who you are and what your circumstances are also is, I would say, a tragic state of being.
A project like this seems like it must have been an especially close collaboration between actor and director. Was this relationship with the director, Elliot Lester, a much different working experience than some of other projects you've done?
Everything about this was unique because when you're in your average film where you have multiple characters, multiple locations, you of course are relying on the director, but you're also relying on several other collaborators. In this endeavor, my only barometer, my only guide was Elliot. It was, there was a snow blinding quality to this because it's all you, and you got multiple phone calls, multiple YouTube recordings, multiple monologues, multiple situations whereby he is expressing how he feels. And that's a tough thing to stay on top of from a modulation point of view. I really needed Elliot there as a captain to keep an eye on where we were going so that it doesn't feel samey, so that there's genuine variation, and to keep an eye on it as a movie as opposed to a moment. And so from that point of view, it was definitely, I relied on him very, very heavily.
The whole film takes place in the one setting, Peter's house. Was inhabiting that physical space a big part of getting to that character? Did that location, that house, sort of take on sort of a personality of its own?
Absolutely. Yeah, we found this house in Tarzana here in LA, and it was lived in, and I believe still is lived in by, at the time, a 97-year-old lady who continued to live in the house while we shot. Every now and again, she'd walk into the shot while we were shooting. But the house has a very unique and distinct personality, and a brilliant job was done on the production design to really make it feel not only like where Peter would live, but also to have the residue of his mother. You know, you could really feel her personality baked into the walls of that house. And so yeah, it helped an awful lot being there, because it grounded the character, a character who's sort of all over the place. You know, the house itself had a very grounding quality, which I think is necessitous both for me as the actor playing him, but also for the audience.
You've had a successful career throughout the over the years, but of course I think the thing that most people have finally gotten to really know you from is recently Selma last year, where you played Martin Luther King, and it seemed to coincide with this time in America where we seem to be reawakening to the fact that racial injustice and equality are still a thing. What has it been like being part of that film, looking back on it now, and the whole discussion that has arisen around it?
Well, I think exactly as you say, the thing that has been most satisfying about it is that we made a historical film that just so happened to speak to the absolute time we are in. And that's a very rare thing. Oftentimes these historical films, people react to them because, oh, that was then, this is now. I think when you look at our film and you see the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, and then you go to Michael Brown, and then you go to Eric Garner, and now you go to Walter Scott, and now we're talking about Freddie Gray. It just shows that we are on a continuum of this terrible situation within this country, and it's not new. There have been effective means of challenging it in the past, and we need new ways of challenging it now because it's still with us. And, and I think one of the biggest keys to change is awareness. And I think when the film came out, people were asking me the question a lot and saying, well, do you see who the next Martin Luther King is? Who's going to be that next leader? And I think, what has manifested is that in many ways, what Dr. King represented and what he was so effective at doing was to corral the truth of injustice and have people focus on it and to amplify it to the point whereby people felt a need to do something about it. Social media has now given us that very thing. It is now a means by which people come together, and a situation that the news, the media, and even the authorities may want to hide is not hideable. Everyone has a camera, everyone has a voice, and that cumulative voice can make itself known on social media, and that's a truly extraordinary new development. It's a metamorphosis of the civil rights movement, but it's proving to be effective because I think that some of the charges that have been brought against people for injustice may have taken longer without that amplification of a unified voice. And so, the fact that our film comes along at a time that shows how it was in the past, and we are watching every day how it is now, and the fact that there is a correlation between the two, that's an amazing thing to have a film do. And now that Paramount has made this incredible gesture of putting a copy of Selma into every high school as well in America. I mean, these are just things we couldn't have anticipated, but it's incredibly satisfying that the film is doing far more than just entertain people.
Well, I want to thank you, for talking to me today, and I want to congratulate you on Nightingale and Selma, of course, and best of luck going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice talking to you.